When people see someone sleeping on the sidewalk, the questions come fast. Why don't they get a job? Why don't they go to a shelter? Why don't they leave the city? Why does the government spend so much money while the streets still look the same? At first, these questions sound simple. But the closer you look, the more complicated they become. Because homelessness is not just one person refusing to change. It is often the point where housing costs, low wages, addiction, mental health struggles, broken families, shelter problems, and failed systems all meet in public view. In this video, we are going to look at the questions almost everyone asks about homelessness, and why the answers are far more difficult than they appear. One, why don't homeless people just get a job? One of the first questions many people ask when they see homelessness on the street is simple. Why don't they just get a job? From the outside, it can sound like the most obvious solution. If someone has no home, then work should be the way back. Earn money, save up, rent a room, and slowly rebuild life. That idea makes sense when someone is looking at homelessness from a stable place. But once a person is already living outside, the path back into work is not as simple as walking into a store and asking for a job application.
And then they fail to realize a lot of homeless people, they can't work because a lot of them have too much of a PTSD or have too bad ADHD, or they don't have access to clothes or a shower like that. Like, how do you go to work and you have on the clothes from 3 days ago? You have to go to work presentable with your hair tied back, brushed, with your clean. Like, you can't go to work with dirty ass fingernails. And I don't know, it's very hard to work when you're homeless. And then it's also hard for us to work when we're homeless because we were working and somebody stole our generator while we were at work.
People say get a job. Okay, well, if I had somewhere to rest my head where my stuff wasn't stolen, where I didn't have to worry about blankets, where I didn't have to worry about food, I might be able to get a job. I have nowhere to get a shower daily. I have nowhere to keep work clothes. It's not as easy as get a job.
Like I've been saying on here, it's so difficult to be able to keep a job when you can't stay clean, and you can't wash your clothes every day. You know, nobody wants you coming to work stinking. Right. So, like, go find a job, you bum. Like, that's easy to say, but I mean, would you hire me?
To get hired, a person usually needs more than the willingness to work. They need an address to write on the form, an ID that has not been lost or stolen, a phone that stays charged, clean clothes for an interview, a way to shower, a bank account, reliable transportation, and enough sleep to show up on time the next day. These things sound basic, but for someone living in a tent, a car, a shelter line, or under a bridge, even the most ordinary requirement can become a wall. A person may want to work, but still have nowhere to wash before an interview. They may get a call back, but their phone may be dead because they had no safe place to charge it. They may be offered a shift, but have no way to get across the city early in the morning. They may be ready to try again, but after several nights without real sleep, their body and mind are already running on survival mode. At that point, the problem is not always a lack of effort. Sometimes the problem is that the basic structure needed to keep a job has already collapsed.
Not all homeless people are like that. Not all homeless people are dirty. Not all homeless people don't have jobs. I've met a lot of homeless people that have jobs, but jobs don't solve everything because you have to save money. And that's very hard to do when you're constantly having to spend money.
That is correct. It's very difficult to stack $3,000-$4,000 when you're trying to eat and you're trying to bathe and, you know, care for each other and do other things. Like I have a medical situation going on right now.
And there is another part many people do not see. Not every homeless person is completely without work. Some do temporary jobs, day labor, part-time shifts, recycling, delivery work, odd jobs, or any legal work they can find from one day to the next. But that kind of money often only helps them survive outside. It may cover food, water, bus fare, hygiene products, medicine, phone service, or a few things they need to get through the week. It can keep someone alive on the street, but it usually does not create a real path off the street. Renting a place requires far more than a few small payments here and there. A person often needs a steady income, proof of employment, a deposit, the first month's rent, identification, rental history, and the ability to keep paying every month after moving in. If someone is only earning enough to eat, travel, and replace what gets lost or stolen, saving enough money to enter the housing market can feel almost impossible. Survival income is not the same as housing income. This is why the question needs to be looked at more carefully. Work can be part of the solution, but work alone does not solve homelessness when the job is unstable, the wage is too low, the person has no safe place to sleep, and the cost of housing keeps moving further out of reach. A job can help someone stand, but it is very hard to stand when there is no floor underneath them. So the real question is not only why homeless people do not work. The deeper question is what a person needs before they can get hired, keep showing up, save money, and qualify for a place to live. Because for many people on the street, the problem is not just unemployment. It is the loss of nearly every condition that makes stable employment possible in the first place. 2. Why don't they go to shelters? Another question people often ask is, if the street is so hard, why don't homeless people just go to shelters? From the outside, shelter sounds like the obvious answer. It offers a roof, a bed, and a place away from the sidewalk. But for many people living outside, getting into a shelter is not always simple, and staying there does not always feel safe.
Everything you read in the paper that says all these shelters are so wonderful, not. You have to check them out yourself and you'll see quite different.
They gave out notices today that we could have shelter, 50 beds for 150 people.
I've been homeless the last 3 weeks now because I've been going to housing options every day for the last, since till 9 o'clock till 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and that's all they've been saying is basically come back tomorrow, come back tomorrow, come back tomorrow.
Inside of these places, these homeless shelters and stuff, there are rules that you can't believe.
About 3 hours worth of paperwork. Oh yeah, you're signing your life away. They want to know everything about you, your front, your back, your side, your over, your under, your in, your out. Finally get that opportunity to be housed in that program. After spending 31 days in the cold, in the rain, in the sometimes hungry nights, to be told after only being there 24 hours, you gotta go. We can't have you in our program. Our program. Who is our program? They said that I had too much violence on my record. Those 3 hours I spent in that crowded room, filling out all the questionnaires and everything, honestly, and taking that sincere step toward a changed life was for nothing, because you threw me right back out here and said I wasn't good enough.
I'm on the list for several different places. I turned an application in 5-6 years ago, and they said it might take a couple of years, and I haven't heard from them.
So you've been out here ever since?
Yeah.
But then everyone's always saying, you should be in a shelter. Bad on you for not doing that. Well, you can't. That's not a good place for a lot of people. And now it's just so much red tape in there. You get in there for a week and they kick you right back out. They're not helping any.
In many cities, there are not enough beds for everyone. Even getting a shelter bed can become a long and frustrating process. In some places, people have to provide documents, complete intake steps, call repeatedly, or wait for their name to move through a long list. By the time they gather the papers, find the right office, or finally reach someone who can process them, the available beds may already be gone. For a person living outside, that delay is not just paperwork. It can mean another night on the sidewalk, another day carrying everything they own, and another reason to lose trust in the system. Some shelters require people to call ahead, wait in line, arrive at a certain time, or follow rules that can be difficult for someone already living in crisis. A person may have to leave behind belongings, separate from a partner, give up a pet, or accept a curfew that does not match their daily survival routine.
You know, you go to regular shelters, and there's people that stay awake all night fighting. All they want to talk about is drugs. All they do is steal from people that are asleep. And so nobody wants to sleep in these shelters.
I had bed bugs in the last Salvation Army I was in. You have to worry about your belongings being taken while you're gone. If you leave, you got to be back by curfew, of course. I'd have to work around hours of working and all that. And I just wouldn't want to be in a shelter anyway, having to put up with all those people. And
Even inside, the conditions can be hard. Some people describe shelters as crowded, noisy, dirty, and tense. Bathrooms may not be clean, beds may feel unsafe, and personal belongings can be stolen. For someone who has spent months protecting the few things they still own, sleeping in a room full of strangers does not always feel like protection. There is also the way people are treated. Many shelter workers do important work under pressure, but some homeless people say they have met staff who were impatient, controlling, or disrespectful.
An employee at a homeless shelter lied in a report to have me thrown out of the place. I've seen him beat people up and throw them out in the streets. This is, no kidding, a true story.
When access to a bed, a shower, a meal, or a place to store belongings depends on people who do not treat them with dignity, shelter can feel less like help and more like another system controlling their life. That does not mean shelters are useless. In extreme weather or a true emergency, they can keep people off the street for the night. But a shelter is not the same as a home. It does not always give someone privacy, stability, safety, or a real path toward housing. So when people ask why homeless people do not simply go to shelters, the answer is not that they all reject help. For many, the shelter system feels uncertain, crowded, restrictive, and temporary. The street may be dangerous, but at least it is a danger they already understand. 3. Why don't they just leave? Another question people often ask is, if a city is too expensive, too dangerous, too cold, or too hot, why don't homeless people just leave? From the outside, leaving sounds simple. Move somewhere cheaper. Go to another state. Start over in a place with fewer problems. But for someone living on the street, leaving is not just a decision. It requires money, transportation, documents, a working phone, physical strength, a place to go, and some kind of plan waiting on the other side. Many homeless people do not have those things. A bus ticket may be too expensive. A car may be gone. An ID may be lost. Their phone may not work. Their health may be too unstable for a long trip. And even if they manage to reach a new city, they still have to start from zero. They may not know which shelters are open, how to get a bed, where the intake offices are, which food banks serve daily meals, or which outreach groups can actually help. In a place they do not know, even basic survival can become harder before it becomes better. That is why many people stay near the systems they already understand, even if those systems are broken. They may know where to get a meal, where outreach workers show up, which church gives supplies, which bus route is safer, or which area is less likely to push them out immediately. These small pieces of knowledge may not look like much from the outside, but on the street, they can decide whether someone gets through the day or becomes completely lost. Some people also have family, children, medical records, benefits, court dates, temporary work, or unfinished housing applications tied to that city. Leaving could mean losing the few connections they still have. And if they move somewhere else without stable housing waiting for them, they are not escaping homelessness. They are only becoming homeless in a place where they know even less. This is especially clear in cities with harsh conditions. People may ask why someone stays in Phoenix during extreme heat or in a cold northern city during winter. But the answer is rarely that they want to suffer there. Often, they stay because leaving requires resources they no longer have, while staying at least keeps them close to the few survival points they still understand. So when people ask why homeless people do not just leave, the deeper answer is that relocation is not recovery. A new city does not automatically provide a home, a job, treatment, identification, transportation, or support. Without those things, leaving can become another risk, not a real way out. Leaving a city is not the same as escaping homelessness. For many people, the problem is not that they refuse to move. The problem is that they have nowhere stable to move toward. 4. Is homelessness caused by addiction? Another question people often ask is whether homelessness is really caused by addiction. It is an understandable question, because in many homeless areas, substance use is hard to ignore. People see someone using drugs on the sidewalk, acting lost, or living in a tent near places where drugs are everywhere, and they assume addiction must be the whole story. In some cases, addiction does come first. It can break relationships, destroy stability, and push a person closer to the street. But that is not the full picture.
People get into drugs because they're running away from something that they can't face.
So that's what they look for. They look for drugs, and then when they find drugs and there's something that makes them happy, makes them forget, like, that's all they want.
What do you do to pass time and keep your spirits up?
Just get high.
Just get high.
The only thing it did was it brought down my inhibitions and brought up my confidence.
I think it's a lifestyle, and just the lifestyle and the addiction.
For many people, homelessness does not begin with addiction, but the conditions of street life can push them toward it. When someone sleeps outside, they may go through cold nights, extreme heat, constant fear, shame, hunger, and days without real rest. They may be surrounded by other people who are already using, while drugs are easy to find and often easier to access than treatment. In that kind of environment, substances can become a way to stay awake, numb pain, calm fear, or forget the reality around them for a few hours. It does not make the choice harmless, but it explains why some people begin using after they have already fallen into homelessness. This is why the line between cause and consequence is not always clear. A person may lose housing because of substance use, but another person may begin using after months of sleeping outside. Some people use because they are already trapped, while others become more trapped because they use. Once those two problems start feeding each other, it becomes harder to tell where one ended and the other began. Treatment can help, but it is rarely as simple as telling someone to get clean. For a person already living outside, recovery does not happen in a vacuum. They may finish a short program and return to the same sidewalk, the same stress, and the same people they were trying to escape. Without stable housing and support after treatment, even a serious attempt to recover can fall apart very quickly. So addiction should not be ignored, but it should not be used as a simple excuse to blame every homeless person either. It is part of the crisis, sometimes at the beginning and sometimes deep in the middle. The real problem is that addiction and homelessness often lock together, and once they do, escaping one usually requires solving both. 5. Where does the government money really go? Another question people often ask is, if the government spends so much money on homelessness, why are so many people still living on the street? This question matters because the public is not only seeing homelessness grow in many places. They are also hearing about billions of dollars being approved for shelters, housing programs, outreach teams, motel rooms, case management, and emergency response. On paper, the system looks active. Money is moving, contracts are being signed, programs are being announced, and officials keep promising progress. But when people still see the same sidewalks filled with tents, it becomes fair to ask whether the money is reaching the right places. The problem is not always that no money exists. In some cities and states, the deeper problem is that the money moves through a complicated system before it ever reaches the person outside. It can pass through agencies, contractors, nonprofits, temporary programs, administrative costs, and rules that are difficult for the public to follow. Some of that work is necessary, but the more complicated the system becomes, the harder it is to see what actually changed for the person sleeping on the sidewalk. California gives one of the clearest examples. A 2024 state audit found that the state had spent about $24 billion over 5 years on homelessness and housing programs, but did not consistently track whether those programs were working. The audit said the state lacked current information on the ongoing costs and outcomes of its homelessness programs, partly because the agency responsible for coordinating this work had not consistently tracked and evaluated the state's efforts. That does not prove every dollar was wasted. It also does not prove that every program failed. Some programs may help people survive, get documents, enter temporary housing, or move into more stable housing. But when a system spends billions and still cannot clearly show which programs are cost-effective, which ones are only temporary, and which ones are not producing results, the public is right to question the structure behind the spending. This is where the crisis becomes bigger than money. If a city spends heavily on emergency shelter, but does not create enough permanent housing, people may cycle in and out of the system without ever becoming stable. If outreach teams meet people on the street, but there are not enough treatment beds, affordable units, or long-term caseworkers behind them, the help can stop at the first step. And if success is measured only by how many people were contacted or moved for one night, the numbers can look better than the reality. So the real question is not only where the money goes. The question is whether that money becomes housing, treatment, prevention, and long-term stability, or whether it keeps feeding a system that manages homelessness without truly reducing it. Spending billions is not the same as solving the crisis. If the results cannot be clearly tracked, then the money may be moving through the system, while too many people remain exactly where they were, outside. Where is their family? Another question people often ask is, where is their family? It is a natural question because most people imagine that if they ever lost everything, someone close to them would step in. A parent, a sibling, an adult child, or an old friend would offer a couch, a spare room, or at least a place to restart. But for many people on the street, that safety net is already gone before the public ever sees them outside. Some have families who are too poor, too far away, or too overwhelmed to help. Others come from homes where relationships were broken long before homelessness began. There may have been years of conflict, addiction, mental health struggles, unpaid debts, or repeated crises that slowly exhausted everyone involved. By the time a person ends up outside, the people who once might have helped may no longer be able or willing to open the door. There is also shame. Many people do not want to return to family after losing a job, losing housing, or losing control of their life. They may feel embarrassed, rejected, or afraid of being judged. Some have already asked for help too many times. Others believe they have caused too much pain to go back. Whether that belief is fair or not, shame can keep a person isolated, even when someone in their family might still care. In other cases, the family itself may not be safe. A person may have left because of abuse, instability, or a home environment that made recovery impossible. From the outside, go back to your family sounds simple, but not every family is a place of protection. For some people, returning home could mean returning to the same conditions that helped push them out in the first place. This is why homelessness is often the final visible stage of many private breakdowns. The public sees the tent, the sidewalk, or the person asking for money, but not the years of damaged relationships behind that moment. Before someone becomes a homeless person, they may have been someone's child, parent, partner, friend, neighbor, or coworker. The street is where the collapse becomes visible, but the collapse often began long before that. So when people ask where their family is, the answer is rarely simple. Sometimes the family is gone. Sometimes the family is exhausted. Sometimes the family is unsafe. And sometimes the person is too ashamed, too disconnected, or too broken by the past to reach back. Simple questions do not have simple answers. In the end, the questions people ask about homelessness are not meaningless. There's often the first things anyone would wonder when they see someone sleeping outside. Why don't they get a job? Why don't they go to a shelter? Why don't they leave the city? Why do camps keep coming back? Why does the government spend so much money while the streets still look the same? These questions are simple on the surface, but the answers are not. A person on the street may be dealing with lost documents, unstable work, addiction, untreated mental health struggles, broken family ties, bad experiences with shelters, or a housing market that has moved far beyond what they can afford. None of these problems exists alone. They build on each other until the way back becomes harder to see. That is why homelessness cannot be explained by one word. It is not only laziness. It is not only addiction. It is not only bad policy. It is not only high rent. In many cases, it is all of these pressures colliding at once. And when they collide long enough, a person can lose not just a home, but the stability needed to recover. The hardest part to accept is that the street is often the final stage, not the beginning. By the time the public sees someone living outside, many private failures may have already happened. A job was lost. A rent payment was missed. A relationship broke down. A treatment opportunity never came. A shelter did not feel safe. A program was too temporary. A city moved people from one block to another without giving them anywhere real to go. So, if we only ask these questions to find someone to blame, the crisis will stay misunderstood. But if we ask them honestly, they reveal something much bigger. Homelessness is not just about the people outside. It is about what happens when housing, healthcare, wages, family support, addiction treatment, and public policy all fail to catch people before they fall. And until those failures are faced directly, the same scenes will keep returning. The tents, the sidewalks, the shelter lines, the cleanups, and the questions that never seem to go away. If there is another question people often ask about homelessness, leave it in the comments. Your question might be the one more people need to hear.